Oi, you. It's time for another episode of Dorothy and the Dealer. Let's tune into the conversation.
Hi Mills, how are you today?
Good to be here.
Good to be back in the studio,
Yes.
hanging out with you.
Oh,
It must be good for you as well to hang out with me, is it?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I'm glad because we've got a guest today.
We have a lot to talk about.
We have
the great Dennis Hogan online.
Hi, Dennis.
Hello,
Welcome.
Dennis.
Hello, how you going? I like being called great. If more compliments are good for me.
I was going to call you Lord Dennis.
You're the overlord. I remember that part.
It's really great to have you on the podcast, mate. We've been hanging out with you now for a couple of years.
All our clients know about you, Dennis. We talk about you all the time, and this will be good just to give people a bit more of an insight into who you are.
Yeah.
And what you're about.
Well, I always love speaking to you guys, so I'm looking forward to it.
Cool.
Brilliant.
So before we get going, as usual, with our podcast, Dennis, how we started off is we ask people their favourite song or the song that they're thinking about at the moment or they're singing at the moment. Have you got a song in mind, Dennis?
Look, for my first 23 pro fights, Shipping Up to Boston was a song that I used to love walking out to. Used to get the crowd, really going. So
how does that go? How does that go, Dennis? Is it like an Irish Celtic thing? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know that one on the film The Departed. So, and then when it kicks in, people just start to go wild. So, once you listen to it, it gives you goosebumps when you're walking out to the ring.
I was ringside with you for one of those fights in Queensland, and I remember walking in to this venue, and as I walked in, the energy in the place, and I was looking around, I was thinking, Jesus, it could literally kick off here any minute. If somebody plays the right bleeding song, it is going to kick off here any minute. It was absolutely crazy ringside.
Yeah.
But watching, your determination and your focus as you went in there, and, your skill in boxing is very, very inspiring. How you pick these guys out. You obviously spent a lot of time studying your opponent, watching what's happening. Absolutely fantastic to be ringside with you that time. Mm-hmm. I think I was ringside for two fights. But each time I was very frightened. I was hoping. No. I'm just being honest. I was hoping that Dennis was going to fucking walk me out. In case something went wrong.
I suppose a good place to start with our conversation, Dennis, is just to. I suppose what led you to us, and where you were, how you got into what you're doing, and I suppose what made you seek out personal development or mindset work.
Well, it's the funniest story in the world, right? Because I used to, I found the law of attraction anyway, and I was trying to do that to the best of my ability, and I always wanted to know more on that. So I had been looking at that and utilising some tactics that I knew all along the way. And so, but the crazy story about me is I always found it very, very hard. Well, here's the thing. I always found myself successful, but when I was about to achieve the main thing I wanted to achieve, I found stuff would just go wrong. And obviously, I'll take all of that on because you got to be responsible for your own life as a creator, because we are creating everything in every second. But I just remember that a lot of it took me 10 years to win an All-Ireland boxing championship. Now I boxed for Ireland before I was Irish champion, and I could beat Irish champions in tournaments. But just something was just off whenever I was about to become Irish champion in the semi-finals or finals, whatever. As a football player, all I wanted to do was be county champion. I got to 3 finals, right? I'd been captain of the teams. I'd scored goals at the last minute, stuff like that, to get replays or extra time, but I never won a county final. Right? Okay, I played the game of my life in trials for Kildare, and in the last few minutes of a game where I was almost certain I was going to be picked for the main team, as a under 16, I fell over on my neck and had to go to hospital. So, and then I went professional, and I was boxing my way right through everything, had won everything right up to the point of becoming world champion, fighting the world champion out in Germany. And then all of a sudden, as I was boxing out of my skin, boxing brilliant, the fight got postponed, and then I'd overtrained and I came back again to fight again, and I was only a watered down version of myself. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on for me? I was thinking something must be going on subconsciously. Something's going on, and I didn't know what was going on, but I just knew something was going on. And at the time I remember, and I know, Mitch, we spoke about this before, that back at the time when my brother had a sports nutrition company, he also sponsored an MMA fighter, which ended up being Conor McGregor. And he said to me, Dennis, that law of attraction that you talk about, this fighter also talks about it. He's very like you that way. And so he said, go have a look at this video. And I seen Conor talk about law of attraction and all. And so that was it. And then we added each other on Facebook, and I seen him talk about law of attraction. But then he went quiet for a while, and then he burst back onto the UFC scene. But he was talking about different stuff like balance and emotions and all that kind of stuff, and I just wasn't there yet. I just hadn't found that information. So it all sort of happened at the one time that I was going after that loss. I was doing a bit of soul searching, and then a guy that I know well called Mark Allen had liked one of your Bridging the Gap videos or something on Facebook. And I was just going, well, what's this? And when I clicked on, I was like, oh, there's a Dublin man from in Australia here talking about mindset. Let's have a listen to this. And after the end of that video, everything just resonated with me. And like up to that point, I hadn't made a lot of money. Like if you talk about, you know, something that was going to cost a couple of $100, I'd have to think about it. And then I hear about this seminar that just told me everything that was going on for me in my life and how we're going to change this. And I just instantly got a coaching call, and all I wanted to do was get there. And get there I did, to the very next seminar. So that was the start of it for me, and that's why I did it.
Since then, Dennis, I mean, when we're opened up to the realm of information, that top down, you know, where we're taking in all the information and we get this savage appetite to understand things, and then, you know, you got to know how to implement them, the strategies into your life, and you got to be able to handle, you know, it's not about doing anything else other than learning how to handle life itself. Tell me what's happened since then. Tell me how your career has gone. Where are you at since then? What has transpired? Well,
I mean, obviously, a shift in that inner dominating thought. I mean, nobody really likes to sit back and say, you know, that this is my most inner dominating thought. If that's something you want to talk about, I mean, to just figure that out itself. Really resonates then with how you've been feeling and what's been going on. So obviously that inner dominating thought that was going on for me was really not good enough, and so that's what was resonating with me deep down, and that obviously led from somewhere at some point in my life. And this again is obviously, as you guys point to it, it was a perception that I developed myself at a certain point in my life, and then that started looping over and over and over again. So when I was about to hit the one thing that I wanted to get to, that inner dominating thought of not good enough would loom, and I would self-sabotage, or something would pop up, and then, you know, lo and behold, we're back to life showing up as me not being good enough. So and then when we went over that, and then I seen that life was happening for me and not to me. That changed everything. I mean, even the way I felt about myself. I didn't realize how much anxiety was in my body until I sat back after we did that process, back in the chair, and I felt nothing, just calmness. And just, you know, on top of the other positive things. But I just went, hold on, where's all those where's all that feeling in my stomach gone, which was anxiety? Where's all that stuff gone throughout my body? I felt calm for the first time in my life, and my mind felt calm for the first time, and everything slowed down, and it was like, wow. And everything it took me a while, like it was jaw-dropping stuff, and it took me a while to first of all see it, but then as the weeks and months progressed, I could see how my innermost dominating thought had shifted. I seen that I was good enough. I seen that I was worthy of all these things, and then I started to see everything change. So I went from, you know, obviously then the next thing I did was I did Your Mastermind of Money. And so up to when I did Your Mastermind of Money, I was 16 grand in debt. throughout boxing, I could make money, but I hadn't made anywhere near where I felt I should be making, especially where I was, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Within a short amount of time, not only did I have my debts paid off, I had savings. I was feeling good about that. I started to manifest more money, but also you mentoring me on top of that, you really got me to go after what I knew I was worth. And see, again, you know, I was 23-0 before I had my first loss. And even at that point, you know you're there, you know your record's great. But if you have this inner most dominated thought that's going on through your subconscious, you're still not going after the amount of money that you truly deserve. And it wasn't until I made that shift and mentorship from you that I started to say, now I'm going out for more. Now I know I'm deserving, and I felt worthy of it. And look at me now. I mean, 3 years later, last year I made more money last year than I'd ever made in my life. So there you go. And I truly believe that if I hadn't have mastered my money at that smaller, lower part, that's what you teach. If you can't master it where you have it at a lower point, you're never going to be able to master it at a larger point. And I'm so grateful it happened that way, because if I had got the money that I received last year, I know that I wouldn't have been able to manage it. And so using the techniques and everything that we learned and having more self-worth on top of everything, not just in my boxing and achieving my goals, but that self-worth throughout all of my areas of my life and up in that, and you start to see phenomenal changes. And so I could keep talking to you about how everything has improved, but a very happy man with a beautiful family, my finance, my career, everything going on the right track. And another thing that I've learned throughout one of your seminars was just adversity. You know, that was something that used to set me back, and I used to feel like used to set me back and make me a little bit emotional. Even though I was good at, I was determined to overcome these things. But just what you taught in that letting it go, that just brought me to a new level too, in terms of adversity, overcoming them, and seeing that adversity isn't in the way, it's on the way. So I could talk about this for hours, so I'll stop there.
You know, one of the things that I think, you know, there's a fundamental difference between your destiny and faith. You know, faith is, I have faith that hopefully it's going to rain tomorrow and water the crops. Your destiny is, your eye colour is your eye colour. And it seems that as an athlete, you know, it was in your system. You know, I don't know what was on the walls of your bedroom when you were a kid growing up, but on the walls of my bedroom, you know, there were bands and music, and I was a breakdancer as a kid and all that sort of stuff. And I think what's on the wall of your bedroom as a kid really plays a clear influence on who we are and as we get older. And I'm sure there was most likely some sporting stuff on the wall, posters on the walls of your bedroom. I'm not sure. But I think that as we get older, you know, that destiny thing, and your destiny, you know, you come from a sporting background. Was it in the family? Were you all sports people? How did you get so into football and then into becoming an athlete? What was it?
Well, for me, I had a lot of energy as a kid, and I actually went through phases, you know, of playing pitch and putt, playing golf, playing tennis. Used to love cycling, running, boxing. Did I say basketball, football, soccer? I did everything, and I just wanted to do everything. And so not just that though. My grandfather, he was Paddy Burke. He was the local boxing trainer of Furnace Boxing Club. Right. So from the age of 5 or 6, I was brought along with my cousins and my brother. And we were all just bailed into a car and brought into the army barracks in Naas. And we used to just go in and box. And at that point, my mum worked nights as well. So I was just brought along, you know. And, you know, so that was the start of it for me. And, I didn't really know how much really I was into it until at the age of 12. Like I boxed, and I really wanted to be Kildare champion, and I'd won that, and then Leinster champion. It took me 2 years to win that, and then my grandfather got sick, you know, and they told him no more cold nights out in boxing clubs anymore. So he had to give up training, and I remember I was gone a month past. Back when everyone went back in September, and I was like, oh God, everyone's back training. Okay. And that was the first time I actively seeked to go myself. And I realised at that point it was in my blood, and it was never ever going to leave.
Yeah.
You know, so so I seeked it out myself from that point onwards.
So in terms of you know, we've just watched your career unfold, and I think it's important to talk about, you know, when people shift that innermost dominating thought, what happens is that they tend to be equipped with how to handle the ups and the downs. People, you know, it's important to understand that life is peaks and troughs. It's about how you handle those things. And you've, you know, a very, very, very questionable fight in Mexico, which I know anybody that watched that fight would have known that was your fight. How it was handled over there was beyond, I think personally, was beyond disgusting. You know, the whole thing was a setup, and I think we'd had a conversation with you before. I'd had a conversation with you going out there beforehand. You know, these guys are probably not going to play very fair. They really don't want this guy to, you know, he's a big money maker for these guys. They don't want to take his title off him, and then to come back out and then be invited back out to the US to box above the normal weight that you were happy at. Just tell me what went on there, and just for the sake of the listeners, what do you feel went on? You obviously, everything is part of the overall, as I said, destiny. What went on, and what do you believe the future holds in terms of your destiny and where it is you want to get to, Dennis?
Well, okay. Well, I mean, we just started off with that one going to Mexico. They made that, like, they made sure, because they offered me, before I became mandatory, they offered me that fight in Mexico, and I said no, you have your fight in Mexico and then I'll fight you in the States where we'll get more of a fair decision. And then they held off. And then they waited till I got mandatory. And I'm not even going to talk about the game that they played, but they dangled the carrot in front of us and then waited till the last minute. And they played a game to get us down to Mexico and make sure that happened, where there was no drug tests and where, you know,
I mean, that's an important point. You know, there was no drug test before that fight.
Why is that an important point?
No.
Well, because... It's mandatory. It's mandatory that
that in every 100%. Fight. Okay,
it's you know, it's the top end of town. It's the top end of boxing. And then on top of that, I know even they didn't supply seating for your trainers at the ring side. They, you know, and this is one of the biggest stadiums and biggest boxing events in Mexico. You know, it was really, really underhanded how they handled you down there. And
I mean, so I mean, on top of that as well, you can see it on YouTube that when Munguia throughout the rounds, like I had a perfect game plan to break his confidence and everything, because I know that those punches like that are sort of got that kind of bully mentality, whereas if they're getting bullied themselves, they sort of they go the other way. And so my game plan was working to retreat, but then he was asking, he wasn't even looking at his coach or anyone in his corner, he was looking down to his promoter asking, am I winning? Right, and this was being interpreted. This was interpreted by the man from the zone, your man Mannix. I forget his first name, but and so they were looking at the scorecards, which is completely illegal, and they were telling him you're only a round behind, or you're even, or so that was giving him a hope to keep going. Whereas he was like, you know, he came out and gave it everything in his last round, and even though I completely outscored him on CompuBox, they still gave him the round, which in essence gave him the fight. But listen, I mean, here's the thing. I can talk about details all day and night, right? But here's the thing. When I sat down and we wrote goals, and you know, when I first did it, I did it in one of your guys' seminars, in both of your guys' seminars, and so I wrote, and I got so into, because after that, like, you know, you guys are like, the world is your oyster. Go after what I said. Okay, well, I wrote down what it is that I want, and I wrote goals for 10, 20, 30 years, and I have huge goals. And so everything that's on my mission statement, it's a huge mission statement. So it's not just about winning one world title fight. It's about becoming undisputed, unified champion of the world, and then going on to do bigger and bigger and bigger things. And so when after the fight, you'll see, if you look at it, you'll see me talking about it, but then turning around and saying, look, it's all good. I'll come back and I'll win it again, and I will provide well for my family, and I'll move on. And people couldn't believe. I think the world was in awe of how I handled that.
Yep.
But it's because I was still living in the energy of being world champion.
Yep.
Okay, and so then I came back. And then it was very good. They were meant to give us a rematch, and then they didn't. Then they rescored it, a draw, and it was all just played out perfectly for him to keep the title, which is fine. We did what we could, and we couldn't do any more. So I still know I'd be world champion. And so then we were given a 3-fight deal with PBC, which I'm very happy to be in promotion with those guys as well, with DDP. And so anyway, I was given a very good 3-fight deal with those boys for a title eliminator, and then a title fight, and then a defense. And so that was the way it was going until the very highly ranked opponent had pulled out, and then nothing was on the cards for me. And I think after that performance with Munguia, people didn't really want it, and so then there was Charlo at middleweight, and nobody really wanted to fight him either. This is what I've heard, okay, that 10 people were asked and nobody really wanted to fight him, especially in that time frame that we were looking at, which was 12 weeks. And I know, and a lot of people had said to me that apart from Korbanov, a lot of people don't really come to fight him. They come to survive and get through it and get a payday. And they knew by me fighting Munguia that I would come to fight. And that's what they want in America, is fighters that will come to fight and that will give it. And so originally, though, I said, listen, I'm going to have my smart hat here on, and I'm going to say, you know what, guys, middleweight, I make superweight, welterweight good. I know how to fight those guys. I know that my power is good there, and I know that I take those shots well, and that I'll be world champion there. And that was my vision. I've said it in my head for the last 8 years. And new WBO, super welterweight, champion of the world. Everything was super welterweight. And when they said go middleweight, first off, I had a call, and I just said, look, you know what? Not that I don't believe I can win it, but the certainty I have of being champion of my weight overrides everything. So I'm going to decline. And then 2 days later, they got back on and said, listen, they really want you to do this. The money is, they talked about the money. They pitched me every way possible. And then they said, well, why wouldn't you do it? And I said, it's like this. I've worked so hard to get to this point. I'm so certain that I'm about to hit my goals. I said, if I was to go and take this, right, and go into the unknown where I'm not certain, right, and then lose, and then I lose everything that I built up to this point, then I would not be able to live with myself. Right. And then it came back to me and said, but what if they promise you that you're still where you are now, one fight away from a world title fight again? Because no one will try to fight Charlo right now, and he needs to fight, and you need to fight to stay relevant now, and everything else. So I said, come back and get that from me. So he did. And they've stayed true to the word. Now, we can come back to the fight, but right now I'm still one fight away. The fight was meant to be coming up soon, but now with the coronavirus, it's been put on the back foot. But I am certainly ready to go. I'm itching to get back to my weight, and I will be world champion and unified world champion at that weight. If we want to go back and talk about the ins and outs of what manifested, and I believe all these things manifested because I wasn't supposed to be there anyway. But I will say something funny before you ask me a few questions. The house we stayed in Brooklyn was 154 High Street. And when we knocked up to the door, I just had to laugh because 154 is the weight I usually fight at. And 160 was the weight I fight at. Outside, I can ask the boys, outside was a car with a registration 154 written on it as well. And I just went, please don't be the universe telling me I should be at 154 right now. But here we are.
I like, I remember when we first met, and I remember the conversations that were had with you, I know in particular with Mitch and you, about the fact that you touched on it earlier, about the fact that it wasn't just about winning one fight, it was about being the champion. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't just about the one step. And I feel like when you have that goal in mind and that end goal in mind, the wins and the setbacks along the way are just a part of the parcel of getting to that end point.
I think the conversation that I'd had with Dennis was, Dennis wanted to win the title, and I was like, no, fuck that. We have to dominate the industry.
Yes,
that's what you want to be doing.
Yeah.
We want to dominate the industry.
But in order to do that, right? And this is where I suppose where the question I had in mind earlier was coming from, is that in order to do that, you have to have a why that's bigger than just winning a game. You have to have a why and a purpose and a reason that's bigger than just, I'm going to win this game and I'm going to be the champion of this fight, that I'm actually going to dominate the industry. So in your in you guys working together, you were obviously working on your why, Dennis, and the reason that you were doing this in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, finding out my why that day was an absolute smack and like a smack in the head, because I actually remember a very vivid moment of where I was in my bedroom, and I had just done something before, because I helped out, and I had gone to the prison out in Wakehall and spoke to some of the prisoners, and I remember the feeling that I got from that. And I remember of how me being a boxer especially made them open up to me a little bit more, and they kind of gathered around me a little bit, and they were very, very interested in me, first of all because I was a boxer, and then I think they listened to what I had to say. They gave me more weight because I was a boxer, and a lot of the guys there resonated with that, because a lot of those have a very big fight in their lives. And so I remember coming back, and then also I remember just saying, the feeling I got from that, and I just thought, I feel like this is a calling for me to help people because of how it felt and the impact that I could have. And then I just thought to myself also, I said, but I also want to be world champion and follow those dreams. And I remember I asked the question, I said, which should I do? Like, am I here to impact the world more, or am I here to be a boxer? And that was only about 2 years before. In a seminar, I realised that the two of them were intrinsically linked, and one boosted the other. So now I know that it's obviously to be the greatest and best version of myself and inspire others to do the same. And that's why with that loss in Mexico, or what we call it a loss, and then that one in Brooklyn, I still feel like that's actually adding to the weight of when we finally lift all those belts, and we will very soon. What's that going to add to not just me, not just to the feeling of doing it? Because when I visualized it, and Mitch, you helped me get into the moment of visualizing that, I put so much energy into it being so ecstatically, beautifully empowering, and all of those things, and the feeling of it had to be so that I feel like this is adding to make the manifestation real. Not just that though, it adds more weight to my why, because it shows people that you don't give up regardless of anything. And there's I could go on about that as well, but one of the things that I also know is that the things that I learned in that last fight camp alone were very, very powerful, and to get to the level of being world champion and unified world champion, and to hit my goals, some of the lessons that I learned throughout that last camp actually are what I will need for the rest of my life in order to make my goals come true, in terms of being an unbelievable boxing coach and having as many world champions as I have down to actually achieve, and so on and so on.
The other thing I wanted to touch on, if we can quickly, is there's a prior to you doing any of the work that you've done with us, right, you obviously had to do some work on your mindset, and you had to do some work on, like you said, the law of attraction, probably a little bit about staying positive, etc. Can you just speak a little bit about the difference between, because a lot of people talk about, you have to have your mindset in the right space. But to me, doing work like we do here is totally different to just working on your mindset, because it's a whole other ball game. Can you just speak to the difference a little bit about those things, Dennis? For you as an athlete?
I will certainly, because I mean, when I burst on the pro scene, and I had nine fights and 9 wins in my first year. And then I remember then in 2012, I had fought on Fox Sports and had a TKO win against the guy. And I just thought, okay, I've managed this law of attraction stuff, because I'd done lots of law of attraction techniques and they actually worked. Like, I'd manifested somebody calling me who I hadn't heard in a year, and manifested money coming through the door, like it says in the book The Secret. So all of those things are actually legit. But where it started to get confusing for me was after I had that big win and everything was going good, and then all of a sudden things started to go belly up, and I started to go down. And when that started to happen, I started to feel a little bit, I won't say depressed, because I'll never class myself as depressed, but I started to feel down, and then I was wondering, I must have gone off track, and I mustn't be doing this law of attraction well again, and then I'm going, but there's ups and downs. And then all of a sudden, then I went back good again, and I had another few wins, and it was good. And then I got injured, and I'm going, well, why did I get injured? But then I seen after I got injured that there was benefit to that. So it was very confusing, this whole, stay positive all the time and all positive. And so, and then obviously then going to you guys and then and again, I'll just add, this third thing that myself and Mitch spoke about before on YouTube, and McGregor had burst on the scene, and he had talked about being balanced and being emotionless and all of that. And then, I wasn't really resonating with what he said, but it wasn't until I had done your seminars that I really resonated with what he was talking about. That being balanced was a massive one for me, because then I realized that trying to be positive all of the time and is obviously the more positive you try to be, the more plus you try to be, the more negative shows up. And so, and it's because life is always in a balance. It's always trying to get you back to homeostasis. And so once I realized that, a lot of penny drop moments and epiphany started to happen to me, and look back and started to see, and it really helped me to stay balanced. And the more balanced I stayed, the quicker I started to go. But that information for me was absolutely vital.
Yeah. I think that's the difference between saying you're a champion and knowing you're a champion. I think to me that's the difference, because positive thinking is like, I'm a champion. You're just you're spouting out words. But when you know it, it's a different thing, and you understand that champion doesn't just mean I've won all my fights. It means I am the sum of everything about me, and I'm still a champion. I acknowledge all of those parts of me.
Well, I think, the only time we're a failure is when we let losing defeat us. That's really the only time that we're a failure. And I think that to truly be in a state of equanimity is to understand that this is a part of being a champion. It's about how you handle those moments. Yeah. And if you listen to what Dennis is saying, sure, Dennis has been through quite a lot in the past 12 months. He asked for this, and this is what is required to get him to where he needs to get to. The focus of his destiny and his alignment with that outcome is greater than anything that happens in between. Does that make sense? And I think you can really hear that in what Dennis is saying. And the objective is to stay completely focused on that and know that everything that is happening is part of the way. Where if you're thinking, I'm a fucking winner, I'm a winner, the first loss, and you're like, that's it. Where with Dennis knows, no, this is just a part of what actually has to happen. This is not stopping me from getting to where I need to get to.
Absolutely.
And that's what I if we look through time, a true champion is, and a true winner is someone who has never let losing defeat them.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Thanks,
and I resonate with that a lot. And I'll just say that one of the, obviously the values, when you guys talk about values, is very powerful. When, the videos that you put out, and when you live in alignment with your top 3 values, that's when the greatest things happen. And I resonated those. I found out those things in your seminars also. And again, what I wrote down and what I kind of resonated with for years was actually started off as boxing success, family, and then travel. And over the last few years, I've actually realized that it's not even just boxing. It's not boxing success. It's achievement. I love to achieve, and I know where that values come from, a void of obviously being in school and not being academic, thinking that I couldn't achieve, and thinking, I'm perceiving that I was something else. And then my next one, which I used to say family, but it's connection, and now I lay it down to connection, because I have a great connection with my family, but also people, friends, family, everybody, sponsors like yourselves. Everything is connection. And then also travel. travel for me is not just travel, it's freedom, one of those things. So I mean, when I live my life in accordance with those, when those losses came, I was resonating with my why. I was reading my mission statement every day, and I was resonant, and I was still living in my top 3 values. And as I did that, I still grew in determination and certainty of where I need to be. So
great message. Great message.
Yeah.
Dennis Hogan, listen, as ever, mate, it's always fantastic having a chat with you. I hope I trust the kids are well, and give that wife of yours a big hug and a kiss from me.
Yeah, same from me. Thanks so much for your time, Dennis.
You're a legend.
It was
Thank
great.
you very much.
Great having
See
you.
with those belts, buddy. It's not long now.
Mitch wants a picture with them too, Dennis.
We'll get it, don't not to worry.
He'll wear his green boxing shorts.
There's nothing wrong with the colour green.
Nothing wrong with the colour green. But you in the boxing shorts I want to see with the belts, Mitch.
I have fantastic legs. Is that what you're trying to say? All right,
Thanks so
Dennis.
much, Dennis.
Right.
God bless,
you,
buddy.
guys. Take care. See ya. Bye-bye.
If you found this information inspiring, make sure you subscribe and tune in to the next Dorothy and the Dealer podcast.